Perfect. Okay, and kind of some background on just the passage that we're going to be talking about. The main verse that we're going to be hitting on is verse 6, which says, "For this reason I remind you to fan and to flame the gift of God, which is in you through the laying on of my hands." But basically, that this whole passage in 2 Timothy kind of reveals to us more of Paul's relationship with Timothy. And Paul was definitely like a mentor to Timothy. They're probably like pretty good friends, probably besties actually. Um, and I was doing some research just on their relationship in general, and it talked about how Timothy is one who might not be like super um, capable, kind of in his own like abilities to go out and to really spread the gospel. Like he was more timid and just kind of careful and not really sure of himself in some ways. And so it was super fitting that Paul's writing this letter um, to him, and he's just super encouraging because he starts off, he says, "I thank God, whom I serve, as did my ancestors, with a clear conscience, as I remember you constantly in my prayers night and day. As I remember your tears, I long to see you, that I may be filled with joy. I am reminded of your sincere faith, a faith that dwelt first in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and now I'm sure dwells in you as well." And then verse 6 says, "For this reason I remind you to fan and to flame the gift of God, which is in you through the laying on of my hands. For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control." All right. So like I said, we're going to focus on verse 6, which is super awesome to me because I really like that mental image of like fanning into flame the gift of God. And I know that you guys have kind of been working on like spiritual gifts, yes? Um, so I definitely want to look at those for you specifically um, and kind of look at, I guess, ways that you can be fanning them into flame and like what that's going to look like and how to do it and why we would do it, sort of thing. Some people are more gifted with conversation than others. For some, it comes more easily to like continue conversation or kind of really know how to work a conversation, if that makes sense. Um, but I think all of us have just the opportunity to say things that are worth saying. Um, and I find myself a lot of the time saying things that aren't really worth saying. Um, I don't know. Do you find like there are times in your life, like when you're surrounded by the people that you're influencing, um, that maybe you're not saying things that are worth saying, or like what?
I feel like in my case, I'm not saying enough things.
Okay.
That are worth saying. So,
What to you is something that's worth saying?
um, I don't know. And like a simple thing, like just like saying thank you to someone, or like just,
True. Yeah.
know. So, I mean, I'm pretty good about that, but
Uh-huh.
just you know what I mean. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of the people who's like, it's kind of difficult to carry on a conversation with some people. So that's why I feel like that. So like, yeah, it depends on the situation, like what's worth saying.
Mm-hmm. But kind of like the general, be appreciative of
Yeah.
things. For sure. Um, Something that I struggle with, I guess, in my friend group sometimes, um, is our conversation um, kind of too surface level too often. Um, and I think something isn't really surface level if you're learning about someone's life and those things are important, and those like connections that you make, like, oh, what's your major, like stuff like that, those are super important. But I feel like there comes like a time when um, like you kind of run out of those things to talk about. um, so do you have friends like that you would say are just like merely surface level, that maybe you could bring up maybe something more deeper, like spiritual conversation with them?
Well, I mean, I have a lot of non-Christian friends,
Mm-hmm.
so we don't talk about spiritual stuff. But I don't feel like it's necessarily like surface level, because like
Mm-hmm.
we've talked about our lives before, you know.
Yep.
But that would be an instance, like something we're saying, maybe bringing up like church more often, or like just my relationship with God more often, but not like pushing it onto them.
Right.
But,
And that brings up kind of what we talked about the other week with blessing instead of cursing someone, and just the two polar opposites of that, and kind of like just bringing, even if you never directly mention like, you know, you should really love Jesus because he really is great. Even if you never mention those things, but you know, say someone's complaining about something, and you just have like this thing that you just twist the conversation, maybe without even them like knowing it, to just be like, oh, like, you know, what were 5 great things about this person, kind of like what we talked about the other week, and like good conversation starters for those, just in general, are like, oh, tell me like the best part about it, or highs and lows sort of thing.